I became interested in the art of blacksmithing by chance, really. I always had that love of iron and steel and the whole industry and working with it. But it wasn't until college that I really got into actually blacksmithing. I went to school for business management. I wasn't really sure what I was going to do with my life at that point, but I had to fill free electives. You know, in college you have all these other classes you have to take outside of your major. And one of the classes on the list that semester was blacksmithing. And from the very moment I picked up a hammer and I hit hot steel, I knew that was it. That was what I wanted to do. Greg Meeker was my mentor for blacksmithing. He was a blacksmith down at Timberlea Camp in East Troy, Wisconsin. He was a blacksmith for over 47 years, and he taught me, well, he really took me to the next level. I would have been very amateur if I had to learn on my own all those years. I met Greg through a mutual friend and kind of a chance encounter. Many years ago, I worked for a hospice organization, and we had chaplains there, as any hospice organization would have. And our chaplain, he walked by, his name was Fletch. And he must have overheard what I was talking about, because about a week later, he comes into the office there, and he says, "Yeah, I heard you talking about blacksmithing. Are you interested in that?" And I said, "Absolutely." And he said, "Well, there's a friend of mine, he's been blacksmithing for over 40 years. Would you want to meet him?" Well, of course. So the following Saturday, he came to my house and picked me up. And we drove down to East Troy, Wisconsin, and we walked into the smithy there, and that was the first time I met Greg Meeker. We just talked the whole time about smithing and everything along those lines. And that was the beginning of a 7-year relationship with him. I consider myself a traditional blacksmith. Not so much traditional in my techniques of the kinds of tools I use, but traditional in that traditionally blacksmiths did everything. They were your hardware store. They were your prototypists. They were your engineers. So I consider myself to be a traditional blacksmith rather than so much of an artist blacksmith, because I can make anything. And probably 99% of what I do is prototyping. Somebody comes to me and says, "I want this for my outdoor kitchen or my garden," or whatever it happens to be. And I do that, but it's the first time that thing's ever been made. So it's a prototype. These days, modern blacksmiths, they'll usually pick a specialty, like there'll be an artist blacksmith or an architectural blacksmith. I don't want to pigeonhole myself. I don't want to just work on one thing. That's not the kind of person I am. I like to explore everything about something that I'm into. So that's why I'll do anything. I'll make those blades, I'll make those tools, I'll make the architectural pieces, whatever needs to be done at the time. I have my own smithy today. In fact, I'm sitting in it right now. This is the smithy that I started building 5 years ago, and we just completed in March of 2017. In my smithy, I have a couple of anvils, of course, lots of hammers, lots of tongs, lots of hand tools. The most important piece of any smithy is, of course, the forge. And I have both kinds of forges. There's a coal forge and a gas forge. A lot of smiths are particular to either coal or gas. There's raging debates on both sides about which forge is better, coal forge or gas forge. I have both because I see the merits of both. The story behind Stormcloak Forge, Stormcloak became kind of not really a nickname in college, but I went to school in Marquette, Michigan, which is right on Lake Superior, and it gets some fantastic storms. All winter long, we would typically get 200 inches of snow or more in a year. It was kind of crazy. And so in the wintertime, when the storms were really bad and I had to walk to class, I would have, your usual hat and gloves and snow jacket and all of that on. But I'd throw this wool cloak over it to keep me warm as I was walking to class. And people started realizing that I'd wear that cloak on really bad stormy days. And so, oh, Sam's got his storm cloak on. And that's where the name came from. And years later, when I was forming my business and I had to come up with a name, I was like, Stormcloak Forge, cool, yeah, let's go with that. I knew that I wanted to stay in the Milwaukee area. Milwaukee has a great history for blacksmiths. And my wife and I, we knew that maybe a year or so after we got married, we were gonna look for a house. And we knew it would have to be a house that would have some kind of a shop for me to work in. That was really a request by my wife because she knew otherwise she'd never see me. So we drove up to Mequon and we pulled into the driveway. And most people would have looked at this property and immediately turned around and driven off. But I saw this building, the building that became my smithy. I saw, well, frankly, the ruin of this building. And all I could picture was the finished product. I knew, no, that's the place. That was it. It called to me. That was it. When we started, it was 3 walls. There was no ceiling, there was no roof, there was no 4th wall. From there, it was just work of rebuilding it, finding the right craftspeople, people that I trusted and who saw my vision of what I wanted to do. The process to rehab my smithy took 54 weeks. We were 2 weeks longer than 1 year. A lot of that time was spent working with the city and answering their questions and jumping through the hoops of what we had to jump through for them. That was the majority of the time spent. It wasn't the actual construction of the building. My wife, Sarah, has been not just part of the process, she's been the driving force behind everything that happened. I wouldn't have even known where to begin. I don't know that, I can't say that I would have given up at various parts of the process because I would have given up before I even began. Sarah's the researcher. She's the schemer, the planner, she has the ability to break down a big project into smaller parts and say, okay, well, let's do this. And she drove me. She had this passion to see my dreams come true, to rival my passion for blacksmithing. I'm not sure I would have ever gotten to where I am now without her behind me, pushing me, driving me. The best thing that you can do as a beginning blacksmith is just absorb knowledge. Blacksmithing can be very basic, but at the same time, it can be very, very complicated as well. And if you don't have somebody that you're partnered with or mentored with or anything else, that's my best advice to you, is keep that passion alive and just absorb any knowledge you can. This day and age, there's so much out there. The internet, books, videos, et cetera, look for it, get it, gobble it up, so to speak. And hopefully in doing all of that research, you'll start to develop a passion for maybe a particular type of blacksmithing or an area of it. A lot of young blacksmiths or beginning blacksmiths, the first thing they think of is, I'm gonna make a sword, without realizing that bladesmithing is a very specialized aspect of smithing. And it takes a lot of technical know-how and a lot of time to do. And I've seen too many beginning blacksmiths get discouraged by that. Hey, by all means, if you want to make a blade or a sword, go for it. But when your first project doesn't come out, don't get discouraged. Keep going. So yeah, my biggest advice is to do the research and follow your passions, follow your dreams.